David Harris, your time here is over. The factory needs modern blood, and you're standing in the way.
My own son just fired me in front of the people I've worked beside for 3 decades.
It's not personal, Dad. The board agrees that new leadership is the only way forward.
David's calloused hand reached for his badge, the plastic worn smooth from 30 years of service. He turned and started down the long aisle. His footsteps, the only sound cutting through the stunned, heavy silence.
I remember when he sat by my daughter's hospital bed and told me not to worry about the bill.
Marcus jammed the kill switch. His lathe shuddered and fell dead.
He paid for my son's operation. I won't let him walk out alone.
Elena slammed her press to a halt. Across the floor, other hands followed, valves closed, switches flipped. One by one, until the entire factory fell silent. At the exit, David paused and looked back. The factory floor had become a still photograph, every worker frozen, every motor dead. But the factory hadn't always been a battleground. In his pocket, David still carried the first photo ever taken inside it.
Linda and I, 30 years ago, when the floor was just a rented garage.
She had believed in him when no one else did. Together, they turned a handful of machines into a livelihood for dozens. He remembered Marcus's face the year his daughter needed surgery, the way the man's hands trembled when David pressed the bonus into them.
He said, "Don't worry about the money. This is what family does."
Back then, Stephen had followed him everywhere, clutching a toy hammer, wanting to be just like his father.
Where did that boy go?
Now, Stephen was erasing him from the very office Linda had helped decorate. At home, David sat in the dark, a cold coffee untouched before him.
She would have been heartbroken.
The next morning, the factory lights flickered on, but the silence from the day before had settled into the steel beams like rust.
I want machines running in 15 minutes. Anyone not at their station will be sent home permanently.
The workers moved to their posts, but their hands were heavy. Every motion felt like swallowing a shout.
The stack of hospital bills, the ones David paid without a second thought, flashed in Marcus's mind.
Stephen pinned a typed notice to the bulletin board and turned away without a word.
Production overhead drops 20%, effective immediately. A reduction in force list will be posted Friday.
The break room fell dead silent. Workers huddled, reading the names, counting the positions that would disappear.
22 years on this floor, and my name is on that list.
This factory used to stand for looking after its own. Meet me tonight in the church basement, all of you.
David never would have let this happen. The question now is, what are we going to do about it?
In the church basement, under a single buzzing light, the workers' murmurs sharpened into a raw, open argument.
David paid my son's medical bills when insurance said no. I owe him more than a paycheck.
Same here. If my daughter hadn't gotten that surgery, she wouldn't be walking today.
A younger worker gripped his hat and spoke into the silence. He worried that a walkout meant the plant would close and kill the last jobs in town.
Stephen is killing those jobs right now. Staying quiet won't save them.
That night, Marcus stood on David's doorstep. The porch light caught the deep lines on his face.
David, the floor is ready to stop cold tomorrow. But we need to know, are we doing the right thing?
I can't lead what's coming, but you know those machines better than any suit ever will. Do what you think is right.
Before dawn, in a borrowed garage, the workers gathered their tools and rehearsed the shutdown like a promise. The morning whistle screamed, but no machine answered. Workers poured through the gates, a silent river of blue overalls. Stephen stood at the window, his face pale above his pressed suit. His coffee cup hovered, forgotten.
Get me the board chairman and every client on contract. Tell them it's an unscheduled maintenance break.
Inside the factory, the air hung motionless. The only movement was dust spiraling in shafts of sunlight. By mid-morning, the workers crowded a church parking lot. Their breath formed clouds in the cold air.
David, we walked out, but what now?
David pulled a folded deed from his coat pocket. a property he'd bought years ago, hoping he'd never need.
It's a 3-bay garage with a few old lathes. Not much, but it's paid for.
You've had this the whole time?
I promised Linda we'd never be without a floor to stand on.
Inside the church basement, David stood before the crowded benches. His hands trembled slightly as he began.
I have a workshop, but I can't pay full wages, maybe half for the first few months.
A murmur rippled through the room. Families with mortgages, medical bills, children's tuition, all calculated in heads.
We'd follow you to a tool shed if you were the only one swinging a hammer.
Elena stood, holding a piece of notepaper she had already prepared.
My family owes you my son's life. I'm in. Who else?
One by one, the workers rose. 23 men and women, each voice firm as steel. David watched them, his throat tight. He looked away toward the window, blinking. They passed around a single sheet with handwritten resignation letters, each signing below the last. Tomorrow, they'd empty their lockers and build a new beginning with their own hands. Under a gray, pre-dawn sky, pickup trucks lined the factory gate. Workers hauled crates and canvas bags in silence. Stephen's luxury sedan screeched to a halt at the gate. He stepped out, his tie whipping in the wind.
What do you think you're doing? Every one of you has a contract. Put that equipment back.
You fired our factory the day you fired David. Contracts don't matter when there's no soul left.
I'll double overtime and double bonuses. Anyone who stays gets a 5% raise today.
No one moved. The workers stood like a wall of worn denim and unblinking eyes. Then a battered pickup pulled through the gate. David stepped down, his work boots crunching the gravel.
Let's go.
Workers tossed the last boxes into truck beds and swung into their seats. The convoy rumbled to life. Stephen was left alone beside the empty loading dock. The factory behind him a hollow shell of silent machines. The workshop's first days smelled of rust and stubborn hope. A lathe seized on Tuesday, screaming to a dead stop.
Piece of junk. This thing's older than me.
A flying belt nearly caught a loader. Elena yanked him back by the collar before he could shout. Then the rotary phone rang, a hardware store needing custom brackets. David wrote the order with a shaking hand. Across town, Stephen stared at an empty factory floor and dialed his lawyer. A week later, the papers came. A process server walked into the workshop during lunch. The room went cold. David unfolded the document. A temporary restraining order, demanding they cease all production.
We'll fight him with our own hands if we have to.
Number, we fight with the law, but we fight.
The workshop hung in limbo, one small order pinned to the wall, and a legal battle that could end everything. 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, a news van pulled up. A young reporter stepped out, microphone in hand.
David Harris didn't fire us. He carried us when no one else would. That kind of loyalty can't be sued away.
The story spread. By morning, the headline read, "Fired founder, loyal workers. A factory's soul walks out." The workshop phone rang again. A voice asked for David. It was the regional manager of a hardware chain with 40 stores.
You want $200,000 worth of custom hinges. We're under a court order. I can't promise anything.
That afternoon, a pro bono lawyer walked in. She'd read the story and offered to fight the restraining order pro bono. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a crayon drawing, a stick figure in a blue shirt with a red cape. Grandpa David scrawled below.
My daughter asked me to give you this. She said you're the superhero who saved her brother.
David pinned the drawing next to the order form. The workshop still held its breath, but the air had changed.
Looks like the whole town is on our side. Now we just need a judge who sees things the same way.
The workers crowded the loading dock, eyes on the empty road. David's smartphone buzzed on the workbench. The screen flashed. Legal aid. The pro bono lawyer's voice filled the speaker. The restraining order is dissolved. The judge called it a waste of the court's time. Across town, Stephen's phone buzzed with the same news. He stared, then smashed it against the wall. A black sedan pulled up outside the workshop. The regional manager stepped out, a thick contract in hand. David signed on the hood of the car. Then he shook the manager's hand, his grip firm and steady.
Didn't need a judge to tell us we were right.
Number, but it's nice to have the paper.
The old factory gate wore a single sign, for lease. The parking lot was a graveyard of silence. Outside the workshop, David pinned the contract and the crayon drawing to the doorframe. The workers broke into applause. 6 months later, the workshop hummed with 3 shifts. 2 new hires, a welder and a finisher, learned the rhythm from Marcus.
David, we're in the black. First time this place has made a real profit.
Then we do what I promised. Everyone gets health coverage back by Monday.
A news alert flashed on Marcus's phone. Harris Manufacturing files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Stephen's luxury sedan, now dusty, sat alone in the factory's cracked parking lot. A bank foreclosure notice was taped to the gate. Inside his empty office, Stephen sat with his head in his hands, the silence pressing in like a weight.
I took everything he built, and I turned it to dust.
3 days later, a figure appeared at the workshop gate. Stephen stood in a wrinkled suit, holding an old photo.
Dad.
David stepped out, wiping grease on a rag. He didn't speak, just waited.
I found this. It's us. The day you let me hammer my first nail.
That was a long time ago.
The machines inside went quiet. Workers filled the workshop door, their faces hard.
You fired me in front of them. You would have cut their benefits if they hadn't walked.
I was wrong, Dad. I see it now. Let me make it right.
Don't call me that. You lost the right the moment you said modern blood.
Marcus and Elena stepped forward, a wall of worn flannel between David and the man who had torn his world apart.
The door is behind you.
Stephen stared at the photo, then let it fall to the dirt. He turned and walked through the gate. Not a single worker moved. The only sound was the gate's rusty hinge swinging shut. That evening, the cemetery was empty, except for a single figure carrying a handful of wildflowers. He knelt, wiped dust from the stone with a thumbnail, and read her name as if for the first time.
They followed me, Lynn. All of them. Just like you believed they would. We built it again. Smaller floor, bigger heart. Everyone has health coverage.
His hand dipped into his pocket and came out with a single gold band.
I let Stephen go today, for good.
He set the ring on the cold granite, next to her name. It caught the last light. For a long moment, he simply breathed. Then she stood, brushing grass from his knees. He turned and walked toward the hillside, his outline shrinking against the fading sun. The ring remained, a tiny circle of gold on gray stone, but the weight he had carried for 30 years was gone. The next morning, the workshop smelled of coffee and baked bread, not cutting oil. David stepped inside, and a chorus of voices shouted, "Surprise!"
Happy birthday, boss. My kids helped with the cake.
A hammer. You trying to put me back to work?
To the man who never stopped believing in us.
David's throat tightened. He set the cake down carefully, then pulled Marcus into a rough embrace.
You're the reason this place has a soul.
They spent the morning eating off paper plates, sharing stories of the old factory with laughter instead of bitterness.
My daughter asked if you're still wearing a cape.
David looked around at the ink-stained hands and calloused palms, and for the first time, the workshop felt not like a business, but a home. After the last paper plate was thrown away, David and Marcus stepped outside into the cooling dusk.
David, I never properly thanked you. Not for my daughter, not for everything.
David stopped walking and turned. He already knew what Marcus was going to say.
The hospital bill was $42,000. I was 2 weeks from losing the house.
David remembered the day he'd walked into the accounting office and written the check without a moment's hesitation.
I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because that's what family does.
Marcus's eyes glistened. He reached out and gripped David's hand with both of his.
You saved her life. I owe you a debt I can never repay.
They held the handshake, then pulled into a rough, brief embrace. The sun sank below the roofline, and the two men stood silhouetted against the fading sky. Stephen sealed the last box in his office. The walls were bare, the silence absolute. He carried the box past the silent factory floor and didn't look up. His car idled at the gate. A foreclosure notice flapped under the new "For Sale" sign. At the first red light, he reached across the seat and picked up the old photograph.
He taught me how to hold a hammer. I taught myself how to destroy.
His fingers opened. The picture fluttered to the floor mat, landing face down. He pressed the accelerator. The town shrank to a gray smudge in the side mirror. The highway opened before him, a long gray ribbon with no clear destination. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't look back. The photograph stayed on the floor mat, face down, as mile after mile disappeared beneath the tires. 3 months later, the workshop's walls had been pushed out. New machines hummed, but the biggest change was unspoken.
I built this place with Linda's belief. Now, I'm keeping a promise to all of you.
He lifted a stack of certificates. Marcus's brow furrowed, then went slack.
From this day forward, this isn't my workshop. It's ours. You're all owners now.
Elena's hand flew to her mouth. A single sob broke through the silence.
You're serious. We own a piece of it.
David handed the first certificate to Marcus. Their hands met and held. The workers surged forward, lifting David onto their shoulders. His laugh was soundless, swallowed by cheers. On the workshop wall, the crayon drawing of a superhero still hung, its red cape now as bright as any flag. The sign above the door still read Harris Workshop, but the name had never meant less. Morning started with a wrench in his hand and no particular place to be. He'd fire up the old drill press for a few minutes, then shut it down, just to hear it hum. By noon, he'd be outside, a stray cat on his lap, coffee mug cooling. A delivery truck rumbled past. Marcus leaned out the window, hand raised, grin wide. A worker's little girl ran up, holding a broken toy fire truck, eyes pleading. He turned the toy over, found a tiny wrench in his pocket, and tightened the loose wheel. He fixed the wheel, handed it back. She hugged his knees and scampered off. When the workshop lights winked off one by one, he stayed on the bench. He looked up. Stars spilled across the dark, no city lights to hide them. The cat purred. He closed his eyes, and the silence finally felt full. Elena arrived holding her daughter's hand. The girl clutched a rolled sheet of paper, her grin missing a front tooth. She ran straight to David and thrust the drawing at him, eyes wide. He unrolled it, a tangle of crayon figures, all wearing blue shirts, and in the center, a tall man with a red cape. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, "My Grandpa David." David's eyes glistened. He cleared his throat twice before he could speak.
This is the best reward I've ever received.
He pulled her into a bear hug, then rose and walked to the workshop wall. Next to the old photograph of Linda, he pinned the crayon drawing. Linda's sepia smile and the child's scribbled hero, side by side. The workshop hummed with its usual noise, but in that corner, the past and the future had finally shaken hands. 1 year later, the old factory lot was a scab of concrete behind a chain-link fence. A wrecking ball swung in a slow arc. The first wall crumbled with a sound like a sigh. A cloud of gray dust rose, swallowing the old sign that had read Harris Manufacturing. When the dust thinned, the skeleton of the building lay folded in on itself.
Feels strange.
Just bricks. The soul of the place is in our shop.
He turned. The others followed, not a single person looking back. Elena stooped and picked up a single brick, still warm from the collapse. She tucked it under her arm and fell in step with Marcus. Up ahead, David's outline moved toward the workshop, the only home that had never been taken from him. On a quiet Sunday, David sat on the workshop porch, a pair of faded work gloves in his lap.
Linda, I think I can finally put my feet up.
A pickup rumbled into the lot. Marcus jumped out, a broad grin cutting through his gray beard.
Happy early birthday, old man. Come see what we got you.
In the truck bed sat a flat-bottom fishing boat, painted a deep forest green.
You've got to be kidding. This must have cost a fortune.
We all chipped in, and we won't take no for an answer.
David pulled Marcus into a hug, his laugh muffled by a flannel shoulder.
All right, but I'm not cooking the fish.
The workshop porch filled with laughter, the boat waiting for its first dawn on the water. Before dawn, David pushed the boat into the still water. The oars cut without sound. He cast a line and settled back. The lake was a sheet of gray glass. On the distant shore, the workshop lights flickered on, a thin plume of smoke rising from the chimney. The faint hum of a lathe carried across the water, a heartbeat he knew by heart. David's face was calm. A small, quiet smile lifted the corners of his mouth. He didn't pull the line. For the first time in years, he had nowhere else to be. The sun climbed over the treetops, spilling gold across the water. The boat drifted, a speck on the vast sheet of light, the workshop a warm outline behind. The image held, peaceful and still, until the screen slowly darkened to black. Sometimes the best revenge is a life well built.